may have come across videos on YouTube for European Portuguese on how to sound more like a local, more like a native. Usually those are related to, I don't know, specific words, expressions, perhaps pronunciation rules. However, today I'm exposing mistakes that the Portuguese make, and that by making them as well, you would sound more like a native. But a disclaimer, I take no responsibility whether you're going to be making those mistakes or not. I'm just saying you will sound more like a local, and perhaps even impress people by making those mistakes. As you may have noticed, this is not a regular place to learn European Portuguese. It is the unschooling place to learn European Portuguese. I'm Catarina and I love languages. I've learned 10 of them. I've lived in 6 different countries. Now I help you feel at home in Portuguese. One of the mistakes you see a lot, even just as a tourist, you don't even have to live here. So going to restaurants, you will see it a lot. Hoje há caracóis. You will see spelled like this, but it should actually be spelled like that, because this is actually a verb. It means there are, so there are snails, whereas this one is a preposition and an indefinite article. It means at the. And it's not like we want to say today at the snails. The reason why we make the mistake is because they both sound the same. So, but people forget one is a verb, one is something else. This one is similar, also involves the verb vir, there are, but in a different way. So quite often, and I confess I'm guilty as charged, I do this as well. We say, so a year ago, há ano atrás. Atrás is actually not needed because already expresses the idea of ago, okay? So if you ever hear a Portuguese person say it, you can tell them off and say, mas vocês não deviam dizer isso, é só há ano, okay? Há 2 anos. Whatever the time. Ooh, this one really makes me itchy. You see it at doors of restaurants, of cafes, shops, everywhere. So, abrimos às 3, for example. You will see the accent that way, going up, but it should be going down, okay? When every time we talk about the time, we say at the 3 o'clock, you will have the accent going down. It's a grave accent, acento grave. It's very simple, but somehow it didn't stick with us at school in all those school years. And then when we open restaurants and cafes and shops, we simply forget about the direction of the accent. You're not going to do that, are you? No, traz o meu casaco and traz o meu casaco sound exactly the same, hence the confusion for us. And it shows you precisely that an S between vowels, doesn't matter if it's 2 different words, will sound like a Z. And in this video I explain more about Portuguese phonetics. Now the difference is that trás is behind, atrás, and trás is the imperative, in this case, the imperative of the verb trazer, to bring my jacket. Now, tens que me contar tudo sobre ele, tens de me contar tudo sobre ele. The difference here is small, one is a que and one is a de. The most correct is de, but you will hear a lot of us saying que, okay? And you might not even hear the de because it's hardly pronounced. The e's at the end of words are not pronounced, and the de is it's just an added bonus there, almost like a bridge in between words. So it's hardly audible, but it's good for you to practice your ears. You can check my Mini-Tuga below, where you can get access to 6 different resources, so native Portuguese content created by native speakers for native speakers, but you can get exposure through that as well. And check what I'm saying, if I'm right or wrong. Check for yourself. This one is not super serious, but it may annoy language purists. So, para além disso and além disso, fiquei sem rede. So, para além disso is sort of a pleonasm. You don't need to say the para there. Além disso is perfectly enough, but again, something you might hear us say. Okay, this one I love because it's something that you hear kids, like let's say primary school age, will say all the time. And I remember back at school, you had a choir of other kids saying, it's not por causa que... Não quero gelado por causa que estou constipado. Não quero gelado por causa da minha constipação. So it's por causa de, always, and then a noun, not por causa que. You will sound like a 7-year-old. Beware. So this is the only one really you should not be making. Prefiro ver séries do que filmes, or prefiro ver séries a filmes. small difference, but it will make your Portuguese sound slightly more accurate if you pay attention to this. So it's not do que, it's this one, cozer and cozer, confusing, again, because they both sound the same. So a z in between vowels sounds like a z, and s is the same. That's why we say casa, not casa. Okay, that's Spanish. But the funny thing is, they mean different things. So cozer with an s means to knit, okay, to sew, and not to knit, to sew. And cozer with a z means to cook something, to boil in water. And usually the way we remember that is because cozinha is with a z, and if it's related to kitchen, cooking, then it's a z as well. Similar problem here, so we have conselho and conselho. It sounds the same, so we need to pay attention to the spelling. So conselho with an s is advice, which, thank God, in Portuguese is countable. It's so hard for us to think in English having to say, I have a piece of advice for you. We just want to say advices because we can say conselhos. Whereas with the C, it means a counsel. So you will notice, so you might notice if you've done road trip, if you've been road tripping around Portugal, you will see bem-vindo ao Conselho de Lisboa, Conselho de Mafra. The verb realizar is a funny one because we tend to, I think it's influenced from English because, I didn't realize it was going to be cold today. We will use it in Portuguese, não realizei que ia estar frio hoje. That's actually wrong. And it was funny because I was at university, shame on me, when someone actually told me that you shouldn't be using the verb like that. I'm like, but everyone uses it. So at some point you know, because people use it, maybe we end up, it's like who decides? The grammar, the language police, or is it actually the people using it? So I did stop using it, but to be honest, I think a lot of people do. And so what is wrong, what is not? So this one is hard to pronounce, but I'll show you how, in terms of the pronunciation, you can see that it's wrong. Encontramos-nos às três. So we meet each other at 3, or encontramo-nos às três. So if you know how to conjugate verbs, the first person plural will end with an amos or emos or imos, depending on which kind of verb it is. So it will have that s at the end. It sounds like a sh. However, if it's a reflexive verb, then you have the nos afterwards. It's too much shit. Encontramos-nos, it's hard to pronounce. So we actually then are allowed to drop the S. But a lot of people miss it and then it sounds really funny. Eu, quando morei em Inglaterra, eu apercebi-me que os nativos, os ingleses, davam imensos erros. Não é imensos, mas davam erros na escrita. Sobretudo o computador. Na altura era o Facebook que se usava mais. E eu estava apavorada porque assim a pessoa passa anos, eu passei anos da minha vida a aprender inglês, até aos 6 anos, sei lá, e é assim que se escreve inglês, e a gramática é esta, e depois chego lá, e toda a gente erra, não é it's, é it's, tipo, se tem apóstrofo ou não faz diferença, e eu, mas como assim? E eu tinha medo porque em geral eu apanho as coisas muito por imitação, por ouvido, por vejo como as pessoas fazem e reproduzo isso para mim. Então foi uma coisa que eu tive que lidar bem com aquilo. Uma coisa interessante é, por exemplo, a Prati, podem ver este vídeo a seguir também, ela é fluente em português, uma das minhas unschoolers, e eu digo sempre, ela é mais fluente do que eu em português, mas nunca vai ser nativa, porque ela não dá estes erros. Eu dou os erros o tempo todo, faço abreviaturas quando falamos por WhatsApp, mas ela não os copia. E acho isto fantástico.